Alright, welcome back everyone. Today I'm going to be more or less going over like what this all culminates into in imagery. So when it comes to syntheses and the first three true dichotomies, and this is all explained in one image. And I'm sure some of you guys have seen things like this before. Like it kind of looks like a yin and yang symbol. It kind of looks like, trees of life and other things that people make, but it's just an image that's supposed to represent my concepts or the concepts that I'm trying to elucidate. So obviously this isn't all the syntheses. Like I have 9, 10, 11 just aren't on here. And this is just to kind of give you an idea of what our current understanding of what it looks like. And let's get started. So the first thing to know is these lines are the first three true dichotomies of space, time on the right, and then energy. Obviously they can, you can swap them pretty much interchangeably. It's not really that big a deal. It's just to understand that there's these three true dichotomies, and obviously we come out of energy, so that's really the only one I guess you can't really change out, because we are a manifestation of energy. You could say like we're obviously space and time are incorporated in us and are bounded by it, but fundamentally we're made of energy, space and time, I guess you could say. But but we are syntheses of energy. Like space and time do change, but energy is the difference between us all. So each synthesis tier. So, and as you can see, there's a gap. This means that none of them can truly be 100%. Like you cannot have infinite energy, you cannot have infinite time or space, because you have to have the other two. So as soon as space, time, or energy become infinite or zero, like the whole universe ceases to exist. So the harder you push more and more energy into something, reality pushes back in a way that you wouldn't expect, like black holes or other phenomenon. So we're yet to observe all the different aspects of what there is in the universe to share. But so you kind of just understand, like we understand these concepts pretty easily. Like it's not something that I need to explain too deeply in terms of space. Like everybody knows what space is, both in terms of outer space and space in general within the universe. So the spines of the universe, the spines right here, you can call them spines or whatever you want to call them, synthesis tiers. But these tiers are representative of the syntheses. So it starts with you have the first synthesis of the first three true dichotomies, and then out of energy pops the first synthesis of quarks, leptons, and bosons. And then they all manifest all these different true dichotomies, gravity, the weak forces, strong forces, electromagnetic forces, light, electromagnetic, so light. So all these true dichotomies exist, and some of them are more stable, and that's kind of what it's supposed to represent. It's like it's very stable at first, and as the more and more created, it becomes obviously more chaotic, and then once it reaches a threshold and equilibrium at the same time, so it's at that point where it can manifest protons and neutrons, and then poof, those all pop into existence. So they start to pop into existence based on some kind of characteristic or something in the universe that it was either part of the context or situation it was in, but it couldn't have, protons and neutrons could not have come into existence without quarks, leptons, and bosons. So they're fundamentally needed to exist for a period of time, and then in a certain context, protons and neutrons can form. So whatever that may be, and then boom, protons and neutrons come into existence, and they manifest all their new true dichotomies. And then protons, neutrons combine with a tier 1 synthesis of electrons, and boom, you get atoms. So under that particular context, these two tiers combine into the these two tiers of protons, neutrons, this one, and the boson, electrons. They combine to create this new tier right here. So it pops into existence. It creates a whole bunch of new true dichotomies, like exothermic and endothermic reactions, all kinds of true dichotomies that never existed before as a result of these atoms. So things that there's things that no other one of these syntheses can do that atoms can do, and the same for each synthesis tier. So atoms now have their own unique characteristics, and they bring new things into the world, and then atoms combine in various ways amongst each other to create molecules. And then there's all this new stuff that manifests based on molecules that are not possible just with atoms in and of themselves. So if you just have an atom of lithium, and just having it exist does not mean it has these characteristics. So it needs to have a molecule in order to have these new characteristics. So whatever new characteristics come about as a result of molecules, those are what we should differentiate based on. And this is the reason why they have overlap, because obviously what affects atoms is going to affect molecules, and so the higher or the lower tiers can affect higher tiers, and the same is true the opposite way. So higher tiers can affect lower tiers. An example of that is when new molecules are created, it's going to interact with atoms in a different way. So let's say there's some that are more volatile, then they cause atoms to degrade and fall apart, which affects protons and neutrons and affects quarks. But the further down you go, the more stable everything is. So quarks, leptons, and bosons are very stable. They're very, I wouldn't say they're hard to change across their true dichotomies, but they're things that are more stable and more nascent. They're less affected by true dichotomies, such as temperature and other things like that. Like if you were to raise the temperature to like a ridiculous degree, as you go up this chain, it becomes more and more unstable within a different along that true dichotomy. So if you were to think like life can only survive in this much of a window, a very narrow window of these true dichotomies, then you expand out to molecules. They can survive in a bit higher or less, the higher amount of temperature and other true dichotomies, and then so you expand outwards as you go down. How much, what breadth of a true dichotomies these things can survive in. So, and true dichotomies are anything like temperature, and if you want to watch my videos, I explain it in depth what a true dichotomy is, and it's a pretty simple concept that has a lot of nuance. So it's basically just a spectrum with asymptotic barriers on each side. So like with temperature, it's on the low end, it's absolute zero is the asymptotic barrier. We'll never be able to get absolute zero, and then Planck temperature on the other end. So there's an infinite asymptotic barrier where it basically like levels out at the edge of the what's possible in the universe. And obviously, like as we gain more knowledge, we may find that this might not be there's certain things that may not be the asymptotic barrier we thought before, but we can update these models as we go. But this is the overall model that's in the universe because of the first three true dichotomies, because of the way you cannot have infinite space, time, or energy, but you also can't have no space, time, and energy. So as soon as you get infinite of one of these, the universe would cease to exist in some kind of way. So, and then you have homeostasis. So homeostasis is the ideal for equilibrium between these things. So if you were to say like there's super chaotic life, or like there's super chaotic situation for molecules or proto-life or any of these, what you would want is for them to eventually find their equilibrium so that they can make the next synthesis tier. So for instance, for us, we are unable to integrate AI unless we are within this homeostasis boundary as to some degree, which is, I would say, the Western world. We are in a homeostasis, but we're obviously tilting out of it even before as we integrate with AI. It's like some of these ideas and concepts are causing like transhumanism and other things to come into existence, that just such as transgenderism. It's like that concept, unless we thought about how what the future could look like in terms of gene editing and all these other things, we wouldn't have an idea of what gender should be. It's like it's just sex. Like now it's like social roles and all these other concepts that come into play, because now you can change these things about you according to gender theorists. But I'm eventually going to make a video on gender, race as a topic, as a category. So gender and race, I think, are both categories that do not map onto people, and it's for precisely this reason. It's sex, the human species, male and female, is a synthesis in and of itself. So it is one of these syntheses where it starts, they manifest in reality. So they are one. Males and females are one thing. We are a human species, and we are obviously two distinct things within that. But it's the same way that an atom consists of protons and neutrons. Like, an atom could not exist without protons or neutrons. Like, they both need to be together in order to form this new thing. Much the same way as a male and a female come together to form the human race and the children. So there's these three things, male, female, child, that are necessary to continue the syntheses. So with that out of the way, I more or less explained what these mean. So, and obviously you can replace Lucifer with nothing, no time, no space, no energy, but it's kind of loses its sacred value in your mind because there's a connection to it that you have. Lucifer is connected to us, like the idea of nothing. Like it's part of the pattern that exists within us that we can implement in reality if we wanted to. So we can attempt to destroy everything and create and like make it to where nothing exists. And that's what I argue a lot of people are aiming at when they destroy, when they hate, when they do all these things. They're trying to make things fall apart or commit entropy. And like what we need to do is fight against entropy. Like as a species, entropy is what it's the anti-life, and it's the tendency for things to fall apart. So that's why I argue that the tendency to come together is love or synthesis. And obviously love is kind of ill-defined if you apply it to things, which is why synthesis I think is a better term for things, and love is when people or beings come together to create. So it's like it's hard to really, there are two concepts that both can apply to people and beings, but it's also like, what do I want to use for things? So this is one thing that I'm struggling to figure out, is like, how do I separate? I don't want to separate beings from things because we're all of things, but we came into being. So it's complicated, and I feel like that's going to be a struggle for a long time to figure out which one of those concepts we are. Like, are we things or are we beings? And like, is everything a being or is every person a thing? It's like, or is every being a thing? So it's that's something that our left brain tries to see us as things, but our right brain sees us as beings. So it's a conflict that will go on for a long time, and I think it's good that conflict exists because we need both of those perspectives. We need to look at us as things, to dissect us, to look at us from this almost cold perspective, to tinker, and not tinker with people, but to figure out what makes us tick and how to solve some of the problems we might have as a result. And then on the other end, look at us as beings, like things that we have a relationship to, things that affect our life, things that give us meaning and value. And that's why we need both. We do need both of those perspectives, which is what, this whole thing argues for, is like, you cannot have homeostasis until you try to take everything into account, both perspectives, both sides of true dichotomies, like hot and cold. If you take care of just hot, then you're going to get very good at getting like cooling temperatures down. But if you get good at just cold, then you get good at warming things up. But guess what? The world fluctuates between something that's too hot for us and too cold for us. So too hot, too cold. And we want to be ready for both. And until we do that, we cannot have a true homeostasis. And that's what we're going to need to go into this next synthesis tier. This is going to be the first man-made synthesis tier in the universe, the one of social organisms and AI. And obviously us utilizing them in our society doesn't necessarily mean we're going to integrate them into our being quite yet, but once we do, there is no turning back. Like, it will be I do see it as a possible inevitability because of the benefits that come along with it, and it'll just outcompete everything else. It's just like so we have to integrate it in order to keep it at bay, so to speak. Because if we just keep ourselves separated from AI, then AI will take over as the dominant force in the universe. But if we integrate ourselves with it, then we take our strengths and weaknesses and benefit reciprocally from them. So I see that as an inevitability if we want to survive as a species and not just have this rationalization take over the universe. So I think it's likely that it's an inevitability, but so yeah, I've color coded it as red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, because again, it's the same as like radiation. Like the higher up you go, the more unstable it is, the more radiation is involved, and the more like chaotic. So that's exactly what's going to happen as we integrate AI. Things are going to be very much so more chaotic, but as it reaches homeostasis, it'll be ever more able to control the environment and manipulate it to what we need it to be in order for us to survive and thrive in relationship to each other and our pursuit of what we need to pursue. So yeah, you can't reach a higher tier. Like, you can never get to eukaryotes without atoms. So these all necessitate everything down the chain, and you couldn't get to social organisms with AI without social organisms. So like the eukaryotes or single cellular, multicellular organisms could not manifest AI out of nothing. You have to have the previous synthesis tier to get the next one, and it makes logical sense. Like, you can't have atoms without protons and neutrons, and all the way down. Eukaryotes without prokaryotes, prokaryotes without protolife, protolife without molecules, molecules without atoms, etc., 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 etc. So this is how I view the universe, and this is what I see as our purpose and our meaning at the same time, encapsulated in one image. And I think it's a kind of a weird way to look at the world, but this is what my brain came up with when I was thinking about true dichotomies and syntheses, because that's the other aspect of this. A synthesis and a true dichotomy are the only two things that exist in reality, and I don't see anything else that exists. So yeah, that's how I view the world. Thank you guys for watching. I love you guys. Have a good week, and take care of yourselves. And if you have any questions, post it in the below. Thank you very much. Bye.